Hey guys, Paul here. Tonight I'm going to make a birch bark container for some of my art supplies. Lately I've been getting into drawing more, illustration, animals, willow twigs here, branches, and I soak these in water to reconstitute them to make them pliable because they'll break if they're dry. So I've been soaking these in water for about 15 minutes, making them nice and pliable. And my sheet of birch bark here that I'm using tonight, I've also soaked in a little bit of water. It's a pretty cracky sheet of birch bark, but we're just going to make do with it and make a birch bark container here tonight. What I do is I follow my Native American template. This is the mother for all birch bark container, is this template right here. I keep this posted up on my refrigerator. I've made all my baskets with this template by varying shapes, but it's the same basic design. Okay, I'm tucking these two ends in and folding over those flaps and sewing those on with a piece of willow branch. And you want this bend on the middle piece to be going with the grain of the birch bark. Okay, not against it where it's going to rip, but this is a really important section here. The middle piece is just curve up at a slight parabola to where you cut off there, and same thing on the opposite side. Curve into that, cut into the middle section on a curve. And this birch bark is not in the best shape, but we're just going to try as good as we can here today and hopefully make a half decent basket. Alright, let's just test this out now. See what we're dealing with here. This birch bark is pretty old, and the fresher and the better condition it is. That's not bad though. That'll still work. You see that? Let's do the other side. Same thing. From the middle section of your middle piece, cut in a parabola or a curved arc. It has definitely helped that I've wet this and soaked it for a while, because that's made it a lot more pliable. Alright, now we're ready to sew. And what I like to use for this is my Mora 106 wood carving knife. This is the mother of all wood carving knives. This thing is awesome. Full tang, thick spine, carbon steel, laminate carbon steel. Comes to a very, very fine point. Can be used as an awl. I can't say enough good things about this knife. What I like to do before I thread this, and the willow twig is really great. If you don't want to stitch the whole container, you can just put one or two stitches using willow. And I take off all those nubs or buds just to smooth that out, because they will get caught as you're threading it through. So you want to smooth all those out. Right there seems pretty good to me. This is where I take my Mora 106 and use it like an awl. You want to get in an area of the birch bark that's not splitting away, so to make sure that your stitch is secure. So right there in the middle, there's no split in that area of the birch bark. So that's where I'm going to focus on. And then I'm going to thread this through. And I'm just making one stitch. Now, the Native Americans are very elaborate with this stuff and make beautiful, wonderful designs with many stitches going up the entire crease of that seam, to the point that these are watertight for gathering water or maple syrup However, I'm just using this for my art supplies, so I'm going to make one stitch with willow branch. Now historically you would use sweetgrass, which is a type of marsh grass, and it can be braided, etc. But what I like to do is on the outside here, very gently, we're going to make a half knot. And then this wood is going to dry in the shape of that half knot. Pull that tight, taking care not to break it, because remember, it is going to loosen up a little bit as it dries. So get it nice and tight, especially being wet. See that? That's all I'm going to do. Alright, I just trimmed that away about a ½ inch leeway on each side to account for any contracting. But again, when this willow branch dries, it makes for one really good stitch. And you can even put a bead of glue around the knot there, the half knot. But it's really not going anywhere because that dries like wood, like hard wood. Let's do the other side. You want to make your awl hole in a place where the bark is not splitting anywhere through those 3 pieces. You see how I'm working the blade horizontally and not vertically with the grain? Because you don't want to split that. Let's stitch that through. And for this technique, I like to put my stitch on the outside of the container so that it's not getting a bunch of abrasion from the stuff that's inside the container. Very gently work that around, make sure it's not going to break, and avoid bending the branch where there's bent buds that you've taken off, because that's where the weak point is in the branch, is where the buds are. That's why it's a good idea to take all those buds off before you do this. Again, leave about ½ inch there to account for any contraction of the wood as it's shrinking. And then I like to just kind of shape this up with my shears. And use a good pair of fabric shears. These are vintage Italian shears. Shears brand that I actually found metal detecting, which is really cool. You don't just find coins and jewelry and stuff metal detecting. Sometimes you find a tool that is actually useful, like these shears. Alright, that looks real good. I actually did put another stitch there just to close up that flap a little better. But yeah, I got tons of stuff in here. My Opinel pens, pencils.